Out of the Dust, page 209. Cut it deep. I went in with Daddy to see Doc Rice. Doc said, "Why'd you wait so long to show someone those spots, Bayard?" I scowled at Daddy. He looked at the wall. I think he didn't care much if he had some cancer and took and died. Figured he'd see Ma then, he'd see my brother, it'd be out of his hands, he'd be out of the dust. Now he's going to wear bandages where Doc cut the cancer out the best he could, and we have to wait and hope Daddy didn't get help too late. I asked Doc about my hands. "What," I say, "can I do with them?" Doc looks carefully at the mottled skin, the stretched and striped and crackled skin. "Quit picking at them," he says. "Rub some ointment in them before you go to bed," he says. "And use them, Billy Joe," he says. "They'll heal up fine if you just use them." Daddy sits on my bed and I open the boxes, the two boxes that have been in my closet for years now. The dust is over everything, but I blow it off, and Daddy is so quiet when he sees some of the things that are still so strong of Ma, and we end up keeping everything but a palmful of broken doll dishes. I thought once to go through these boxes with Ma, but Daddy is sitting on the edge of my bed. My mouth feels cottony. I fix dinner, and Daddy tells me about when he was a boy. He says, "I wasn't always sure about the wheat, about the land, about life in the panhandle. I dreamed of running off too, though I never did. I didn't have half your sauce, Billy Joe," he says. And it's the first time I ever knew there was so much to the two of us, so much more than our red hair and our long legs and the way we rub our eyes when we're tired. October 1935. Page 212. The Other Woman. Her name is Louise. She stayed by Daddy the days I was away. The first time I met her, she came to dinner bringing 2 baskets of food. She's a good cook without showing off. She has a way of making my father do things. When Louise came to dinner, Daddy got up and cleaned the kitchen when we were done eating. He tied an apron around his middle, and he looked silly as a cow stuck in a hole, but Louise ignored that, and I took a lesson from her. We walked around the farm, even though she'd probably already seen it while I was gone. She didn't ask to be taken to my favorite places, the loft in the barn, the banks of the beaver, the field where you can see Black Mesa on a clear day. She told me she knew Daddy and I had a history before her, and she wished she'd been there for the whole thing, but she wasn't, and there wasn't anything to do but get over it and get on. We both stared in wonder at the pond my daddy made, and she said, "A hole like that says a lot about a man." I didn't intend to, but I liked her, because she was so plain and so honest, and because she made Daddy laugh, and me, too, just like that. And even though I didn't know if there was room for her and me, I could see there was room for her and Daddy. When I asked him if he wanted me to go off to Aunt Ellis after all, Daddy said he hadn't ever wanted it. He said I was his own and he didn't like to think about what Aunt Ellis might do with me. And we laughed, picturing me and Aunt Ellis together. And it wasn't a nice laugh, but it was Aunt Ellis we were talking about after all. The thing about Louise, I'll just have to watch how things go and hope she doesn't crowd me out of Daddy's life. Not now, when I'm just finding my way back into it. October 1935. Page 215. Not Everywhere. I walk with Daddy up the slope and look out over the Beaver River. Louise is back at the house. She wanted to come, but this is Ma's place, Ma's grave, Franklin's too, and Louise has no business here. She wants to come everywhere with us. Well, I won't let her. Not everywhere. Daddy says, "She could have come. There's room enough for everyone, Billy Joe." But there's not. She can come into Ma's kitchen. She can hang around the barn. She can sit beside Daddy when he drives the truck. But Ma's bones are in this hill, Ma's and Franklin's, and their bones wouldn't like it if Louise came walking up here between us. October 1935. Page 216. My life, or what I told Louise after the 10th time she came to dinner. I may look like Daddy, but I have my mother's hands. Piano hands, Ma called them, sneaking a look at them any chance she got. A piano is a grand thing, I say. Though ours is covered in dust now, under the grime it's dark brown, like my mother's eyes. I think about the piano and how above it hangs a mirror, and to either side of that mirror, shelves, where Ma and Daddy's wedding picture once stood, though Daddy has taken that down. Whenever she could, Ma filled a bowl with apples, I tell Louise. I'm crazy about apples, and she filled a jar with wildflowers when she found them and put them on that shelf above the piano. On the other shelf, Ma's book of poetry remains, and the invitation from Aunt Ellis, or what's left of it. Daddy and I tore it into strips to mark the poems we thought Ma liked best. We weren't always happy, I tell Louise, but we were happy enough until the accident. When I rode the train west, I went looking for something, but I didn't see anything wonderful. I didn't see anything better than what I already had. Home. I looked straight into Louise's face. Louise doesn't flinch. She looks straight back. I am the first one to back down. My hands don't look real pretty anymore, but they hardly hurt. They only ache a little sometimes. I could play right now, maybe, if I could get the dust out of the piano. If I wanted to get the dust out of the piano, but I don't. I'm not ready yet. And what I like best about her is Louise doesn't say what I should do. She just nods. And I know she's heard everything I said, and some things I didn't say too. November 1935. Page 219, November dust. The wheat is growing, even though dust blows in sometimes. I walk with Daddy around the farm and see that the pond is holding its own. It will keep Ma's apple trees alive, nourish her garden, help the grass around it grow, enough to lie in and dream, if I feel like it, and stand in and wait for Mad Dog when he comes past once a week on his way from Amarillo, where he works for the radio. And as long as the dust doesn't crush the winter wheat, we'll have something to show in the spring, for all Daddy's hard work. Not a lot, but more than last year. November 1935. Page 220, Thanksgiving List. Prairie birds, the whistle of gophers, the wind blowing, the smell of grass and spicy earth, friends like Mad Dog, the cattle down in the river, water washing over their hooves, the sky so big, so full of shifting clouds, the cloud shadows creeping over the fields, Daddy's smile and his laugh and his songs, Louise, food without dust, Daddy singing to Ma's piano, newly cleaned and tuned, the days when my hands don't hurt at all, the thank you note from Lucille in Moline, Kansas, the sound of rain, Daddy's hole staying full of water, as the windmill turns, the smell of green, of damp earth, of hope returning to our farm. The poppy set to bloom on Ma and Franklin's grave, the morning with a whole day waiting, full of promise, the night of quiet, of no expectations, of rest, and the certainty of home, the one I live in, and the one that lives in me. November 1935. Page 222, Music. I'm getting to know the music again, and it is getting to know me. We sniff each other's armpits, and inside each other's ears, and behind each other's necks. We are both confident and a little sassy. And I know now that all the time I was trying to get out of the dust, the fact is what I am because of the dust, and what I am is good enough, even for me. November 1935. Page 223, Teamwork. Louise and I take walks after dinner, every time she comes. By the time we get back, the kitchen looks pretty good. Daddy only leaves a few things he doesn't understand, like big pans and wooden spoons and leftovers, and that makes me a little irritated, but mostly it makes me love him. And Louise, knowing exactly what's left to be done, helps me finish up. She was my father's teacher at the night school class. She never married. She went to college for 2 years and studied and worked, and didn't notice how lonely she was until she met Daddy and fell into the big hurt of his eyes. She knows how to keep a home. She knows how to cook. She knows how to make things last through winters and drought. She knows how to smooth things between two red-headed people, and she knows how to come into a home and not step on the toes of a ghost. I still feel grateful she didn't make cranberry sauce last month at the first Thanksgiving we spent together. Louise made sweet potatoes and green beans and turkey and 2 pies, pumpkin and chocolate. I was so full my lid sighed shut, and Daddy walked with Louise instead of me out to Ma and Franklin's grave, where he let Ma know his intentions, and Ma's bones didn't object. Neither did mine. and when they came back to the house, Daddy still cleaned the kitchen. December 1935. Page 225, Finding a Way. Daddy started talking about planting the rest of the acres in wheat, but then said no, let's just go with what we've got right now. And I've been playing a half hour every day, making the skin stretch, making the scars stretch. The way I see it, hard times aren't only about money or drought or dust. Hard times are about losing spirit and hope and what happens when dreams dry up. The tractor's busted. We don't have the cash to fix it. But there's nothing saying Daddy can't do the work by hand. It can't be any harder than digging a hole 40 by 60 by 6 feet deep. Daddy bought a second mule with Louise's help, her betrothal gift to him. He walks behind the team, step by step, listing the fields to fight the wind. Maybe the tractor lifted him above the land. Maybe the fields didn't know him anymore, didn't remember the touch of his feet, or the stroke of his hand, or the bones of his knees. And why should wheat grow for a stranger? Daddy said he'd tried some sorghum, maybe some cotton, admitting as how there might be something to this notion of diversification folks were talking about. And yes, he'd bring the grass back like Ma wanted, where he wasn't planting anything else. He'd make new sod. And I'm learning, watching Daddy, that you can stay in one place and still grow. I wipe dust out of the roasting pan. I wipe dust off Ma's dishes and wait for Daddy to drive in with Louise, hoping she'll stay a little later, a little longer, waiting for the day when she stays for good. She wears a comical hat with flowers in December, and when she smiles, her face is full enough of springtime, it makes her hat seem just right. She brings apples in a sack, perfect apples she arranges in a bowl on the shelf, opposite the book of poetry. Sometimes, while I'm at the piano, I catch a reflection in the mirror, standing in the kitchen, soft-eyed, while Daddy finishes chores, and I stretch my fingers over the keys and I play. December 1935.